Have you ever gotten that feeling? You know, when you're watching a new movie or reading a book and you think, hang on, I've seen this story before. Like, underneath all the different characters and settings, there's some kind of hidden blueprint, a secret code they all share. Well, you might just be onto something. So let's start with a really basic question. What actually makes a story a story? I mean, what's the difference between a captivating narrative and just a random list of things that happened? It sounds simple, but the answer is the key that unlocks everything. Okay, so here's the official definition from the people who study this stuff. A narrative is a perceived sequence of non-randomly connected events. Now, the two key words there are perceived and non-randomly. It means someone is telling it, and, this is the big one, the events are linked. There's a reason, a cause and effect. One thing leads to another. That connection, that's the magic. And today, we are going to crack that code. We're going to look at the work of three brilliant thinkers, Vladimir Propp, Roland Barthes, and Gerard Genette. Think of them as our master code breakers who gave us the tools to see the hidden architecture behind pretty much every story you've ever loved. Our first code breaker is Vladimir Propp. Now, way back in the early 20th century, he sat down and analyzed over 100 Russian fairy tales. And what he found? Well, it was kind of mind-blowing. He discovered this universal pattern, a kind of story DNA, that was hidden just beneath the surface of all of them. Propp's big aha moment was realizing that even though the characters and the settings were totally different, a brave knight, a clever peasant, a dragon, a witch, the essential actions in the story pretty much stayed the same. He called these core actions functions. They're the fundamental building blocks. And how many of these building blocks did he find? 31. Yep, Propp identified 31 distinct functions that pop up in a surprisingly consistent order. Together, they form the backbone of the classic hero's journey, all the way from the beginning to the happily ever after. Now, I know 31 sounds like a lot, but they group together really neatly into four main phases. First, you've got the preparation, where the scene is set. Then, bam, the complication, where the villain shows up and messes everything up. That kicks off the struggle, the big adventure. And finally, the recognition, when our hero comes home and gets the credit they deserve. Sound familiar? It should. It's the blueprint for countless stories. So who performs all these actions? Well, Propp figured out there are basically 7 key roles, or actants. These are like character slots that need to be filled to make the story engine run. You've got your hero, your villain, your donor who gives them a magic sword. You get the idea. These roles are what drive the whole plot forward. So Propp gave us the story's skeleton. But a story is way more than just plot, right? It's got atmosphere, mood, feeling, and that's where our next theorist, Roland Barthes, comes in. He's the one who helps us add the flesh to those bones. Now, this is a really cool idea. Barthes said that every story is made of 2 different kinds of information. You've got functions, which are the plot points, the stuff that happens. But then you've got indices. These are all the little details that create the vibe, the atmosphere, the character traits. It's the difference between the king died, which is a function, and the sad old king died all alone in his cold, empty castle, which is all index. See the difference? And Barthes really believed that stories weren't just for entertainment. He saw them as a fundamental part of being human. He wrote that narrative is simply there, like life itself. It's how we make sense of everything, our world, our history, and even ourselves. Diving a little deeper, Barthes said that some plot points are more important than others. He called the really critical ones nuclei, or kernels. Think of them as the load-bearing walls of the story. If you take a nucleus out, the whole thing just collapses. The hero deciding to go on the quest? That's a nucleus. The color of his horse? Not so much. Okay, so we've got the skeleton from Propp and the flesh from Barthes. Our final codebreaker, Gerard Genette, gives us the director's playbook. He was obsessed with one of the most powerful tools a storyteller has, playing with time. Genette broke this down into 3 main controls on the storyteller's time machine. You have the order of events, the duration, or the pace of the telling, and the frequency of how often you talk about something. Let's start with order. A storyteller can tell things chronologically, or they can jumble it all up. An analepsis is just a fancy term for a flashback, where you reveal a key piece of the past. And a prolapsus? That's a flash forward, hinting at what's still to come, which is great for building suspense. Next up is duration. This is all about rhythm and pace. How much time does the narrator spend telling you about something? You could spend 10 pages describing a single second, or you could cover 10 years in a single sentence. That's duration. And this lays out the 4 main speeds perfectly. You can have an ellipsis, where you just skip time completely. 10 years later. A summary is basically a movie montage. You condense a long period. A scene plays out in real time, like dialogue. And then there's the stretch, where you zoom in and go into super slow motion to describe every little detail of a single moment. And finally, Yannet gives us frequency. This one's about how often something is told versus how often it actually happened. The classic example is saying something like, every Sunday we would go to the park. The event happened many, many times, but the narrator only has to tell you about it once. So prop, Barth, Jeanette. Why does any of this matter? Because now you have the key. You have a brand new toolkit to look at any story from an ancient myth to the latest show you're binging and see exactly how it's built from the inside out. So let's recap your new toolkit. Prop gives you the what, the basic plot structure. Barth's helps you see the how, the way details and atmosphere build meaning. And Jeanette reveals the when, how the storyteller plays with time to create a specific feeling or effect. But here's the most important part. This code isn't a prison. It's not some rigid formula that makes all stories the same. Far from it. Think of it as a shared language, a powerful set of creative tools that the best storytellers use, and sometimes break on purpose, to build worlds, generate suspense, and ultimately make us feel something. So, the next time you watch a movie or pick up a book, try to see the code. Look for Prop's functions, for Barth's indices, for Jeanette's flashbacks and montages. Because now that you know the secrets behind the magic, the only question is, what story will you deconstruct next?